Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hank Russell Invitation. Tonight's guest, this guy right here, he was probably the first person that I wrote when I was about to start this podcast. That was like, I think that was well over a year and a half ago. He's written 3 books in a short amount of time. You know, the first book that I ever read by this guy absolutely changed my life, and I'm hoping that it changes it more because it's not one of those books that you can just read once. You need to read it several times. He's he's absolutely like, kind of it kind of comes off like a guy that starts from the bottom and works up with book author writing, because I've never seen a guy write this many books, 3 books in like the short amount of span he has. I'm very giddy about having him on here, and it's a fantastic, honor to have him on here with me. Ladies and gentlemen, author of the 3 books we're going to talk about here in a minute, my main man, Mr. Andrew Kap. Andrew, brother.
Hey, what's going on? Hank, thank you so much for having me, man. Really just excited to be here and looking forward to wherever we might take this conversation.
I'm glad. I'm so glad to have you on here, man. I really am. It's, you know, I've read so many books in my life, and to have an author of like that I actually admire and stuff like that on here is just a fantastic, it's really just quite an honor, and I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I'm sure that as this podcast will progress, I'm sure I'll have authors all the time and stuff like that on here, but I'll always remember the one that was like the first author that I said, I gotta have this guy on the show.
Well, thank you for the compliment, man. Let's make sure I can live up to the hype with whatever we talk about.
Lighthearted note off the bat. Oh, we were talking off the air for a sec. Did you said you're a wrestling fan, man? Do you still watch it to this day?
Yeah, I don't watch religiously, but I don't, we're live, so it's not like I'm dating this broadcast recording. Anyone that watches WWE, I had such a kick out of The Miz
Mm-hmm.
and his John Cena segment, his Invisible John Cena segment.
Yes.
And I used to work for WWE. I worked there for a summer as an internship back when it was WWF.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
What do you think
Dating
about?
myself a little bit. Like Andrew's got to
No.
be old back when it was WWF. But yeah, like
You were
I've been
15
in.
years. You were 15 years old back then. You were just a baby. But oh, all kidding aside, what do you think of LA Knight, by the way?
Uh, you know,
Love that
LA
guy.
Knight is actually a perfect example of manifestation because I mean, there's a fast way and a slow way of doing things. That dude, he makes things happen and people respond to him. And I'm a little bit weird, believe it or not. I don't I appreciate and see what he's doing, but I don't get the same internal thing. I'm very specific. Like I'm big into the Miz and I'm big into what Roman Reigns is doing as a heel. But sometimes when someone's really big, even though I see it, it doesn't resonate with me the same way. I'm very happy for him, very excited for him, but his stuff doesn't hit me the same way certain other people might.
LA Knight. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, I love it. And so using the word manifestation, absolutely leading into what we're about to talk about. I mean, let's talk about the first book, or your latest book, Just Feel Good. All right, your first book is clearly, as you can see behind you, the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read. Do you feel like that I haven't read Just Feel Good yet. I'm going to. I promise you, it's going to be. I'm going to order it on Amazon in the next couple of days. Is it kind of like a sequel to the law of attraction in many aspects?
No, so and I'll try to make this like a long story short. Here's the reason that Just Feel Good exists. The really cool thing about the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read with such a dramatic title is obviously if you want it to do well, you actually have to live up to that kind of bold promise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very fortunate and very grateful that people have bought the book and continue to recommend the book. They tell their friends, they tell their family.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, I remember a friend of mine texted me. She was at a sales conference and she randomly got in a conversation with another woman who was looking at a book. She's like, "What are you reading?" And she holds up her little device and it's got the Last Law of Attraction book you already need to read. And she was, even though she loved the book, she expressed that she loved the book. She was hesitant to show my friend, a new acquaintance, because
Mm-hmm.
it was the law of attraction, because it's stigmatized and you never know how people are going to look at it. And so I thought to myself, you know what? There's probably so many people that enjoy the book but don't recommend it because of that. I'm going to write a non-law of attraction law of attraction book. In other words, I'm going to explain this in a whole new way without ever using the words law of attraction or manifestation, so that somebody wants to recommend this message to somebody else, they don't have to worry about the stigmatized topic or stigmatized term law of attraction, and it'll be a more giftable thing. I made it under 100 pages, so it's more of like a stocking stuffer or a graduation present or something designed to be very easy to recommend and giftable to people.
Oh yeah, I've knocked out a 130 page book in 3 hours. Before, so that's not bad at all. You could take what 8 sessions on the toilet and you're done with the book. So there you
Yeah,
go.
or one long plane ride, or even not one long plane ride, any plane ride. Like that's the design. You kind of breeze through it. So the only time the words like law of attraction appeared in the book is when I say, "Hey, just so you know, I wrote this book called The Last Law of Attraction Book You'll Ever Need to Read." Beyond that, the explanations themselves, it doesn't involve that at all. So it's just a new way of describing things for people who might otherwise might have avoided or been hesitant
Right.
or not given it the time of day because of that term, and their the meaning that they attached to it because they read The Secret or they read some other book that they
Mhm.
thought was wishy-washy or whatever kind of result that they got that they didn't really appreciate.
Right. I mean, in my opinion, like the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read is kind of like the chapter in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, only on steroids in a whole book. Did you ever read
Oh,
Think and Grow Rich?
I did, and thank you for that wonderful compliment, man. I've never heard it put that way. That is awesome. It's like a chapter from Think and Grow Rich on steroids. I think I'm gonna have to reuse it at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, I hold no
Yeah.
bones about that one.
But
But
dude, I've read a lot. I've read Think and Go Rich. I've read The Science of Getting Rich. I've read What
uh-huh.
to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter, which was
Yeah.
unbelievable. I read As Man Thinketh, like a lot of stuff. And it's interesting because you're talking about the books that you read. I used to be a huge avid reader. I'm a little technically burnt out, so I haven't read much in the past 3 or 4 years. But
Right.
before that, man, basically, that not one day went by when I wasn't reading a book, when I wasn't taking in this kind of information
Yeah.
and dissecting it in my own mind and in my own life, even after I'd passed the point where I thought I'd, quote unquote, figured everything out.
You you know, I will say that over the past, I'd say 6 years now, yeah, around 2017 was when I really got into like self-help and developmental books. And then in 2000 and early 19, my spiritual development really kind of took a different turn, right? And that's when I first discovered the law of attraction. So almost 5 years ago. I've read The Secret. I had read Napoleon Hill's book already, and the the law of attraction to me, I'm not saying it was watered down in that book, but if you have a whole book on the law of attraction, then you can understand what it is that it truly means. I mean, let me ask you something. I know that this is an annoying question, but what is the law of attraction for those that are
No,
my for my audience that does not know?
not annoying at all. And it's funny. We'll see how I live up in this answer because on my YouTube channel, I posted a 60-second video where I'm like, let me explain the law of attraction in 1 minute. So I'm always competing with that video. The law of attraction is basically it's with the understanding that everything is energy, and that's you, that's me, that's these microphones and devices that we're on.
Hmm.
That's the thoughts in our mind. Everything's an energy, and all energy vibrates at different frequencies. And law
Hmm.
of attraction is basically this understanding that through this vibration, similar frequencies are going to resonate and attract other similar frequencies.
Hmm.
So, with that understanding in mind, since thoughts are energy like everything else, you can be more intentional about choosing certain thoughts or feeling certain feelings in order to invite a specific result or reality or circumstance in your life because you're technically doing it on autopilot anyway. So you might as well try to be constructive and try to be proactive about doing it to your favor and your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Here's the thing about it. Obviously, Napoleon Hill's book was what 80 years ago, something like that, maybe close to 90 years ago. I don't know,
Mm.
but I feel like that there was this big gap in between where the law of attraction is a more of an esoteric belief. Are you familiar with the term esoteric?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because my thing is, I know that's if I insult anybody's intelligence out there, but basically a minority that follows things is what esoteric is. I mean, that maybe not Webster's dictionary, but you know, but you get what I'm saying, right? Only a few people follow it. And I feel like that the law of attraction, obviously it's been around since the beginning of time, but I feel like that there was this big gap between like maybe the 1940s and the mid 2000s when The Secret came out, and that's when everybody discovered the law of attraction again. Okay, I had never seen it until 2019, for the record, so I didn't see it for 13 years until after the book and the movie was released. But my thing is that, like you said before, if you can accept it or you cannot, or you can accept it and actually make it work in your favor, or you can ignore it and then just to let the chips fall as they may, as they're supposed to, depending on what you put out there, of course. I
Yeah.
mean, am I right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's really one of those things. And I guess I'll steal a page from Just Feel Good where I explain it this way, because obviously when I'm saying this, there's anyone in your audience or anyone in the world who either whether they intellectually get it, but they still either agree with it or they don't agree with it.
Mm,
For those that don't agree with it, for those that might be a little closed off to it, the way I like to explain this is take the very oversimplified example of lifting weights to get muscles. Now, you lift
yes.
weights, you get muscles, right?
Mhm.
And there's two possible explanations by which this actually happens. Explanation number one is, you lift weights, you go to sleep at night, and while you're sleeping, the muscle fairy comes, waves a magic wand, and poof, you wake up the next day with more muscles. Explanation number two is when you are lifting weights, you are putting so much stress on your body that your muscles are actually tearing in little areas. And then, when you rest and you recover, your body's healing mechanism fills in those gaps with more muscle fiber, hence more muscles. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not a doctor, and I know that that second thing is a very oversimplified, maybe slightly inaccurate explanation of how it is. But if I ask anybody on the street which is the right explanation, they would say, well, Andrew, it's the second one. To which I would reply, actually, the right answer is it doesn't matter which one it is. What matters is you lift weights, you get muscles. You put an X, you get Y. You add 2 plus 2, you get 4. And by that same rationale, whether you believe it or not, whether it's the universe or not, if you take 30 days or whatever time to just take a few minutes out of day and just feel genuine gratitude without worrying about what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, or anything else, by hook or by crook, something will happen that you will notice an impact has been made in your life and your reality.
Absolutely. Let me put this comment out here real quick. I like the first option.
I like the first option too. I'll take if the muscle fairy is there, I will gladly receive her.
That's my main man, Paul Duncan. He's also with the Ecamm Live community. I was telling you about off air. Man, that's the man right there. Oof, man. If you ever want to get an Ecamm Live, he's the guy to talk to. But so, okay, well, here's the biggest thing that I have a problem with when it comes to maybe, like, I don't want to be like the preach the gospel of the law of attraction, but the thing about it is that a lot of like modern Christians, and when I say modern, I'm talking maybe like the last 150, 60 years or something like that. This kind of rudimentary, limited way of thinking that's connected with the Christian church, and not realizing that the law of attraction was probably not called that in the 19 or in the before Christ, but it's written in the Bible, correct?
Yeah, well, so I wouldn't even know if or how it might be articulated in the Bible, but I would say this. The universe, like, people talk about the law of attraction, the term they use is the universe. Like, you're putting it out there into the universe and the universe brings it back.
Okay.
Who's to say that the universe and God is not the same thing or not the same person or not the same consciousness? And I'll tell you this, before I ever learned about the law of attraction, I mean, I didn't grow up Christian or Catholic, but I remember watching on TV where people would say grace, before eating. And I just like, okay, this is just a thing that they do. It was after I learned about the law of attraction that I actually understood why people say grace, why they
Mm,
thank the Lord for the bounty they're about to receive. They are
mm,
blessing the food, which will then have with it an extra energy to it that they are going to receive into their body. Like I can see the parallels. And if somebody doesn't want to see that, they don't want to agree with it, the only thing I would say to them is, listen, I'm not here to convince you. All I'm here is to suggest, if you're open to it, there might be a lot more parallels than you think, because it's about gratitude. It's about prayer, people see prayer as asking or begging. No, prayer is asking in gratitude or acknowledging in gratitude.
Mhm.
So I see a lot of parallels between Christianity and law of attraction, but that's not to say that I'm right. That's just to say that's my own perspective in life and how I view it.
Sure, absolutely, and I get it. As far as like the whole God and universe thing. I mean, calling water by a different name, it's not going to get you any less wet, I guess.
Exactly.
But I mean, if that's what it is that you believe in, I'm not going to stamp on anybody like what it is what it's supposed to be. You can, you know, it's amazing, especially when like I said, I keep bringing it back to the Bible, man. But like, I mean, if you look at it in The Secret, I'm sure if you read The Secret a long time ago, but if you look at the verses in the Bible, there is connection to the law of attraction of like, we call it karma, or as a society, we call it as a karma. And then others that think differently also say what you put out there is what you get back, you know, you get
You
what you
reap what you
give,
sow.
that type of thing, but karma is a two-syllable word. That's why we say that all the time. But y- y- y-
Nice and convenient.
yeah, absolutely. But if you read those verses, especially in The Secret, it clearly proves about the law of attraction. The biggest issue is that The Secret is, first of all, it's not the Bible, and it's not even a Christian book, so to speak, but it's a book that most people that are probably into the traditional Christian Baptist of the past 150 years wouldn't even take their eyes upon to look at. So
Yeah.
it's mhm.
And you'll notice, like, when you asked me about this, Mr. Best-selling author, over 100,000 copies sold, law of attraction so-called expert, I
Mhm.
didn't be like, well, here's the exact thing. I said, well, I don't know exactly where it would have said. I'm acknowledging that because for me, well, one, I didn't call myself an expert to begin with,
Mhm.
but I would say in order to expertly implement and use this knowledge to one's advantage, you don't need to know everything. Like everything I talk about, the level of conviction, it's never about telling somebody that my way is right and their way is wrong. All I'm saying is, like, here's my understanding of this thing, and based on my understanding, I've gotten reliable results. Therefore, I'm going to share how I implement it in my life. I'm going to share the roadblocks I've put in my own path that I have encountered, and I'm going to
Mhm.
share how I got around those. And in the hope of articulating it that way, there's basically an open door that people can choose to walk through or not walk through, that they can utilize the same information and the same understanding, hopefully to their own advantage in their own life.
Okay. Excellent. I like that. And the I mean, and I keep going back to the esoteric belief, right? I mean, why I wonder they call the book The Secret for, it speaks for itself, right? I mean, you see that, and your book is like I said before, it's on steroids with other books in the past and stuff like that. But I mean, it's so hard. We tend to forget that 15 years is not a long time. If you go over like 100-year period or 80-year period, 15 years is not very long. And it's just now like where people are starting to embrace it. Hulk Hogan. I don't. Did you see where Hulk Hogan was on Joe Rogan the other day?
Yeah, I saw a couple of clips.
Did
Yeah,
you see? Did you see where he talked about the law of attraction?
I did not. I have to check that out.
I'll send you the. I'll try to send you the video, or you look for it on YouTube. But the thing about it is that he talked about, how he's a straight up Christian, right? But uses the law of attraction, and it worked for him. And he was talking about how he rejected his ex wife because she was all into the universe and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So the law of attraction can work for anyone, in my opinion, based on what Hulk Hogan said.
Yeah, and again, it's like for me, and I do this a lot more in Just Feel Good, and I don't think I really go down this road in the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, but I I spotlight, I believe it's the universe, but maybe, like, for example, when you're visualizing or focusing on a job promotion, maybe when it happens, it's because you fed those instructions to your very powerful subconscious mind,
Mhm.
which is still, even with AI and everything else, it's still the most powerful supercomputer known to man. And your subconscious mind worked out all the steps of getting that promotion, from
Right.
making you unconsciously carry yourself better, to giving you better ideas, to inspiring you to come into the office at a certain time or pitch a certain idea or whatever it might be. Like there's always an untold explanation of how this is possible. And to me, again, most people have said it's the universe, and most of my experience has kind of matched that up. But I also say, it's all a combination. Like if you talk about your subconscious mind, that's a part of the universe also. You talk about your real own personal beliefs, your own religious beliefs. It's part of the universe. Everything's a part of that anyway, so it's all a contributing factor.
Mm-hmm.
And really, again, for me, it's all about keeping things as simple, streamlined, and user-friendly as possible so that you could implement an approach that's going to work for you and basically get you to the experiences and the life that you prefer faster and better rather than slower or not at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. Even if it's, let's say it's not reverting to the universe, like the subconscious mind, energy, all these things are actually scientifically proven anyway. So,
Yeah,
you can be agnostic or atheist and really put this into action because of the energy that you put out there. You know,
without a doubt. And there's got to be something out there that we don't see. And I always remind people, like even this conversation, if I'm not mistaken, you're in Tennessee, right?
yeah, Memphis,
And
Tennessee.
and and I'm in New York right now, and here we're having this conversation live. Now, we could theorize that there's a really long computer, I'm sorry, a really long wire from my computer to yours that just extends across state lines and all this and that.
Uh-huh.
But if I unplug my computer, well, then how are we still having this conversation? Well, it's because there's a broadcast signal that's happening that we can't see, that we can't touch, that we can't grip.
Uh-huh.
So it's a perfect recognition and understanding that there are things, there are frequencies, there are elements, there are realities that are outside our sphere of understanding and of knowledge. And you blow a whistle, a dog whistle, the dog freaks out and you don't. That's because the dog was able to pick up on the frequency that you weren't, but it doesn't mean that the frequency didn't exist. So there's countless examples of things around us right now that our physical senses are not perceiving, but are clearly still in operation and clearly still in existence.
Sure. I mean, the cell phone is the excellent example of that. I mean, there is no cord when you're calling a cell phone, and that was really invented by Nikola Tesla. Everybody always thinks that Tesla is that car company that Elon Musk, drives. But we tend to forget who Nikola Tesla is. One of the most interesting men who ever lived. Never, practice sexual and semen retention so that he could focus on his goals. Died broke, but was probably the greatest scientific mind of the last 120 years. And if it wasn't for him, the cell phone would not exist, the cordless phone wouldn't exist. Anything that is cordless, that's Nikola Tesla.
Very much one of the most overlooked people in history, and not to throw shade at Einstein, but leagues above Einstein. And if people look and research into him, they'll understand what I mean by that statement.
Oh, of course. You don't see people reading books on Nikola Tesla. We know all about Einstein, what he invented and what he did. And not to take away from what he did, but Einstein's inventions didn't make our lives more convenient.
Mm, yeah.
That's the biggest thing. But
But
I'm,
neither
I,
here nor there, right? But
no,
but
no,
definitely
it's,
someone that I recommend people look into because
mm.
he was a great person and great
did,
mind.
did you ever see that movie that he did where, who was it that played him? The guy who played Beast in X-Men. He played Nikola.
Kelsey Grammer?
No, not that one. No, no, no. The younger Beast.
Oh, I don't know the name, but I know who you mean.
Yeah, the younger guy. But anyway, there was that movie. I think it was The Current War. Did you see that?
I did not.
It was about George Westinghouse, Thomas Edison, and Nikola Tesla in the movie. And Tesla was kind of the smaller out of the three because he didn't make his. Edison invented the light bulb in the 1880s or 1890s, and those guys were famous for like the first 15, 20 years until Tesla came around and really didn't get his fame until he was dead pretty much. And such a good movie, man. Like, I could talk about Nikola Tesla all day. He really is. Everybody needs to get on their knees and kiss his ass.
Hmm. And I imagine, I don't know if it's confirmed, but I imagine that's why Elon named the company that way because he was inspired by that. So,
Oh, absolutely. He's talked about it. He said that, Nikola Tesla's his hero.
says a
But
lot. The man that's pushing, everything with SpaceX and everything with Tesla.
yeah,
This was his hero. This is who was inspired. You might want to check him out.
anybody who listens to a radio nowadays, that's Nikola Tesla. I mean, come on now. But it is what it is. You ever read this book called The Celestine Prophecy?
Oh God, I I almost did. I started like, and I don't even to this day I don't remember why I stopped or didn't, but I'm aware of that book. I know it was an amazing leap for people.
I've watched the movie as well, but
Mm.
like Jurassic Park, the movie doesn't do it justice. The book is way better.
Yeah, I
But
think that cliche, the book always being better. It really is something because, like, a movie, no matter how interesting or how dynamic it might be, it's still caught in someone's very specific vision, and it makes a final decision on how someone looks, how someone sounds.
mhm.
Whereas a book, your brain fills in all those gaps. I know The Walking Dead's a big thing. I never got into the TV show, but I read the entire Walking Dead comic series, and I always thought that that was leagues above the little bit of Walking Dead I saw in terms of the TV show.
See, I was the opposite. Like I watched every episode of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, but not have read one book.
Mm.
It's just, I don't know if you were a big Game of Thrones fan or not.
Yeah, I've checked it. Well, see, it's funny because like Walking Dead, I can read it in bite-sized pieces, whereas like those types of books. So it's funny. As much as I read nonfiction, I don't read much fiction because it's such a commitment. Like I'm committing to 700 and 900 pages. I usually avoid it because I'm so busy trying to, read an Alex Hormozy book or something else that I can apply to my business or my life. Not that saying there's anything wrong with fiction. It's more just a choice where I'll have a much easier time just binging a show on Netflix or Hulu or whatever
Mm-hmm.
versus making the investment to read something.
Oh yeah. Well, when I was reading the Celestine Prophecy, page 49 changed my life. You look at you could actually physically see energy. And
Mm,
when I watched the movie, they didn't show that, and I was like, "You're really messing this book up. You're just not doing it justice."
yeah, that's the thing with the director's vision. They're going to go wherever they want to go. But
Right.
it's really interesting. And I'm sure I'm not saying it exactly how page 49 meant it, but when a certain person walks into a room, whether you know who they are or not, some people just have a presence that you can't help but feel. And I've been in certain rooms with people that were famous and not so famous. And whether or not they're famous or not, this presence is a very undeniable thing. It's palpable. You could literally feel it. You could feel the hair on your skin raise.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to tell a story. I remember I used to be friends with Rocky Johnson in 2004 and 5. You know who he is, don't you?
The Rock's father, you mean?
Yes. That's The
Mm-hmm.
Rock's father. I used to be friends with him, not real close friends with him. But The Rock was getting ready to go out and film this movie called Be Cool. Do you remember that movie in 2005 when it came out? All right,
Yep.
he was getting ready to film it. This I used to work with this guy named Charlie Parks years ago, and Charlie, he knew Rocky Johnson real well. Well, one day, I've got my back towards the door or whatever, or in the corner and stuff like that, and there was just this warmth and this energy. Nobody said a word, nothing. You didn't know what was going on or anything like that, and you felt the presence, and you already know who was behind me, The Rock
The Rock.
himself,
Yep.
Dwayne Johnson. And I didn't get I got to shake his hand real quick, but I didn't get to really talk to him. I just said, "Hey, how you doing?" But that's exactly what the energy is that it's some guys just have that a magnetic energy. I met Hannibal Burris in 2019. He was at he was at a comedy club across the street, or it was actually a music hall / comedy club. I met him, and then he went to this smaller bar across the street that did open mics, and he did an open mic night set. You know who Hannibal Buress is, or do you know who he is?
The name rings a bell, but it's not clicking right now.
Google him later. You'll see who I'm talking about. The
Mm-hmm.
guy was just so repelling with his personality and his energy and everything like that. I I met him and talked to him for a sec, but after that, I just didn't want to take any more of his time, man. He just absolutely did not radiate any positive energy whatsoever. And if you look at him, and you don't have to write me back about this, but tell yourself this question: when you take a picture of Hannibal Buress and you look at him, do you see somebody with good energy? And I bet you will say no.
Mm-hmm.
So some guys just have it and some don't. And Hannibal Buress and The Rock may not be quite as equal on the fame scale, but everybody knows who those guys are.
Yeah. It's and it's there. It's like people have presence. There's a presence about people. And it's very interesting when you encounter somebody that is not famous and is not known for anything, and you can still just feel it coming off of them. And it's like they don't care to be famous. They're not trying to be an actor or a musician
Hmm.
or whatever. But it's again another indication that like energy's there. And by the way, I think we spoke about this before we went live and hit the record button. But I worked with WWE when it was WWF, and I met The Rock a couple times too, and that energy was there. It was unmistakable.
I, I get why he is who he is. I mean, the guy, he's like really tall, tan, jacked, smiles. He's got a smile the size of like a watermelon slice. I mean, it's just insane how, like, uh, he really does radiate with him. And I didn't, I forgot you worked for WWE. You just told me that, but I just, man, that's, I think I wish we could all radiate like that. I really do. Some guys have it and some guys don't. I think
Yeah,
you could develop it though.
you can, you can. It's and because you think about it, and it's interesting you bring this up. This is why I'm not a huge proponent of it or trying to push people on it if they're not genuinely enjoying it. But this is why meditation is so powerful because to me, this presence, what this really is, whether the person realizes it or not, who's emanating it, it's just a level of clarity. It's a level of physical and spiritual and energetic and emotional and intellectual clarity that they might not be able to put a specific description to, but there's a clarity there that if you work on clearing your mind, if you work on turning off the news and not having that weigh you down, if you change up your diet and you stop with the junk and you give your body a chance to recover, in other words, if you do certain things in certain ways that cut out or eliminate or reduce the level of whatever it is that might be holding you down on an overall standpoint, you are going to access and emanate that because just by virtue of the fact that we're all alive, we all have it within us to some extent.
Yeah.
It's basically a question of how much you broadcast it, how much you project it, how much you access it within yourself, given whatever your life circumstances, whatever your views, whatever your behaviors, whatever your habits are.
Right. Absolutely. No, the, and I believe that, and obviously if you take a look at me, I'm not a skinny guy by any means of the word, but I remember when I was in my best health and stuff like that, how much I just really absolutely was magnetic. I was way more magnetic, not because I was skinnier, but because of the way I felt. What did I mean, your book speaks for itself. I mean, Just Feel Good. And I'm going to assume that your book is referring to radiation when you feel good, not to mention for yourself, but for how others perceive you.
Yeah, well, it goes, I guess, a little bit that indirectly, but it's more about, there's if you just feel good, there are so many ways by which you can win.
Okay.
Whether it's something like that you just described, whether it's the job promotion, whether it's meeting the love of your life, whether it's having a huge financial win, whether it's a certain improvement for something specifically for you in your health or your finances or relationships or whatever. It's basically, no there's no limits or there's nothing restricting you from what you could have or could enjoy or could improve if you just feel good, even for 5 minutes per day.
It's a good idea. God, I gotta buy this book when I get out of here. I gotta go on Amazon right now. But you
Hopefully,
know,
I'm not overselling it, but
no, I love it. I mean, why haven't the book's been out for like what 3 months now?
it came out at the end of March, and it's interesting because you were talking about how like I wrote all these like 3 books in I guess 4 years.
Yeah.
Um, it was interesting because I started writing that book on January 26th of this year, and I completed it within 4 weeks, and I did everything within 8 weeks. So like I started writing on January 26th, and on March 25th the Kindle was out, the paperback, the hardcover, and even the audiobook. Everything was out. The machine was in place, like the momentum was there. I was doing everything,
Hmm.
which I know is unheard of for people. And obviously, you could say I cheated in that the book was less than 100 pages. But then again, I wrote the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read, which is over 200 pages. I wrote that in like 9.5 weeks. So when I get into something, I basically exclude everything from my life and focus on it, but I dive really deep into it and I get it done. And then I move back on once I've got that completed.
I've got many bucket list things on my list, and I don't think they're all out of my reach. But one of them is to write a book, but I don't think I could do it in 8 weeks.
Well, it depends on how you do it. So like one thing that I employed, and anyone that's an inspiring author, this might serve you.
Mhm.
When I first wrote the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read, I'd been typing a lot already, so it was natural for me to type out the chapters.
Okay.
Whereas years later, I wasn't typing as much except for answering emails. It was a different thing. And you could even tell I know this right now. I'm talking fast. The reason I'm talking fast is not because I'm nervous. It's because my brain is moving so fast. I'm always struggling to keep up with what the thought is and speaking it out. I realize that, and that's something I have to work on for interviews. But by that same token, I can never type fast enough to keep up with my thoughts either. So one way by which I did a lot of the writing for Just Feel Good was I would pull out my iPhone and I'd go into the notes and I'd hit the dictate and I would just kind of do text to speech or speech to text, speak it out, and then I would take that and email to myself and massage it. So for all of my books, I don't like write them. I spit out a first draft and then I edit and massage them. It's all about taking something and just getting your idea out on paper, and then once it's in front of you, then you can kind of mold it like clay because you're no longer racing with your own brain to try to come up with the thought or the idea that you want to express.
Okay. I dig where you're coming from. I can't imagine not. But oof, yeah, it's good
Yeah.
stuff, man.
Dude, what you
I,
might want to do is just hit the recorder and talk for 2 hours. Or if you feel too self conscious of that, have a friend interview you on whatever you want that book to be about, ask them questions. You could even pre write the questions for them. They ask you the question, you speak it out, the recorder is being hit. You hire someone to transcribe that, and now all of a sudden you've got all of this collection of your own thoughts and ideas that you can edit and you can move around and put into chapters and organize for yourself.
I love it. That's a good idea. I never thought about that. Oh, there was what was it? Gosh, I lost my train of thought. There was something about the book. There was something in the book that you had written. I'm trying. Oh, look, you're somebody out there's listening. My man Paul Duncan.
Thank you, Paul.
Great idea. Oh,
Paul,
absolutely.
may
No.
the ideas serve you well, my friend.
Oh yeah, man. That's one of them. That's one of them. That's one of my favorite people, if not my favorite person in the world, right there. But he, for him, man, well, love that guy. But I'm telling you, man, like I know a lot of people that want to write a book, but just don't understand it. Is it because I can't do fiction? I don't want to do nonfiction. I think I'd rather either write about like what's going on with me or something to help others. This
Hmm.
this video podcast is starting out right now. I'm sure it'll evolve eventually, but it's about interviewing people that create value in other people. And I mean, and you have done that in 3 books, and I'll be lucky if I do it in one, maybe.
Well, you might surprise yourself very pleasantly. And the reason, by the way, I brought that up, I saw it as an opportunity, is because even the term write a book, there's a limitation in that terminology as it's implied that it has to be done a certain way, where it used to be handwritten, but now it has to be typed.
Right.
Writing a book just means collecting your own ideas. And if you can put yourself in an interview format, or you can just speak it out loud and then edit it later, like there's always more than one way to skin a cat. And, for me, whenever I write a book, I mean, I already have my brain just kind of puts the pieces together really fast. I take
Mhm.
to it pretty well. But someone else, if they're struggling, they can map out the chapters and the topics without actually writing the chapters, just decide on what the direction is going to be, and then they can fill in those gaps. So a lot of it's just making a template for yourself that you could follow very easily, and then just doing the next step. Okay, it's like, all right, now that I know the ideas, let me put these into chapters. Now that I know the chapters, let me do one chapter at a time or section them
Yeah.
out or whatever it might be.
And I appreciate your maybe your resilience, but also your patience because and to kind of take a little bit of a 180 turn, when I first wrote you in January of 2022, right? We hadn't spoken on the phone. We
Mm.
hadn't talked, and I'd told you that I was going to start this video podcast. Took me a year and a half to do it, but when I wrote you and stuff like that, you were basically encouraging, hey, look, the timing is going to be perfect. The universe's timing is going to be perfect with this. I truly believe that with that and the book writing, if I long as I take law of attraction with some action, I believe the timing will be perfect.
Yeah.
You know,
It could be a month, it could be a year, it could be a decade, it could be next week, it could happen at any time.
you
The
know,
fastest I ever wrote a book and published was 24 hours. It was a 30-page book, but I challenged myself, this was like a decade ago, to write and publish a book in 24 hours. And because Amazon was already there with the functionality and the technology,
okay.
it was done. And I successfully did that. So the book might come faster than you think, but it
Mm,
also might come at a different time when, your podcast is in front of more eardrums and eyeballs. So you never know when the right time's going to be, but when the time comes, you'll feel it.
by the way, I told you this in email, but I'm going to tell you in person now. Remember when I told you my house burnt on March 9th of 2023 here,
Mm,
6 months ago? Your book and one other book, I believe, was the only two books that survived, if I'm not mistaken. The
wow.
law of, obviously, the three words book, it burnt, but the last law of attraction book you'll ever need to read, it survived with a journal.
Mm.
Do you believe that's a sign?
I would take it as one. I mean, it's hard to not sound egotistical when saying that, but if whatever's in front of you, my book or somebody else's, it's whatever's there is for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one, I'm going to interview him hopefully in the next few weeks or whatnot. But I'm, yours was in my backpack in my back seat, and his was in the front seat in the passenger seat. So,
Mm,
very interesting way of looking at it, I thought at least. But
mm. And just and for people wondering, the other book we're talking about, three words I use to sell 100,000 books.
yes.
Obviously, it's me escaping I want to say my comfort zone, but like the niche that I was known for,
Hmm.
just because so many people kept asking me, like, how are you selling so many copies of this Law of Attraction book? And I could say, well, it's Law of Attraction, and it is, but for a lot of people, since that's not enough and they don't want to employ that, they want to know practical, pragmatic strategies. So I basically took that book as an opportunity to reverse engineer and dissect all of the conscious marketing promotional decisions and actions I took in order to do it so that a nonfiction author can kind of mirror that over. So, and the reason I bring that up is because, again, you were saying that, you happen to have those two books in your car. One of the things that I do with these books, one of the things I have in mind is to have it be of such a high quality or serve at such a high level that it doesn't collect dust on the shelf, and it is on somebody like front and center on their nightstand or in their backpack or in their car with them, something that they get so much out of the information, so much use, so much utility that they do want to keep it with them and they do want to dive more into it. So like for me, you saying that that book survived, it technically wasn't an accident in the sense that, especially with a really bold, ambitious title like that, it
Hmm.
was a huge, important intention of mine to make sure that it really was an amazing reading experience for whoever picked it up.
It's still in my backpack to this day. You talk about. I mean, you talked about the meditation. I've read that chapter more than any other because I need to be like, okay, how do I do this again? But
Mm.
it's,
Well, yes, man. I don't know if you know about this. We'll have to talk offline, but I recorded a guided version of that meditation if we're talking about the same thing. So I
ooh,
could send that to you, and you can, rather than having to like memorize it, man, you can just play it and listen back to it whenever you want.
that's cool. That would be awesome. As I believe me, the meditation practice has genuinely helped me with it, and I've been doing it on and off for about a year and a half now because that's when I read the book. But I had to open up. I was like, okay, what do I do here? What do I do here? Okay, we're
Yeah, and
cool.
you're talking about the ultimate abundance money meditation, right?
Yes,
All right, so just like while we're talking about it, if anyone wants it, if you go to ultimateabundancemeditation.com, it's a free streaming, man, or free download, so people can just check it out and listen to whatever they want.
absolutely. But also the grounding exercise and stuff like that. The one that you were the roots and everything like that. That's a good part of it. It's not something that I was that familiar with until I read the book. I mean, I've learned meditative practices over the last 4 or 5 years now, but that one is that's a very good one. And the how do I say this nicely? You know, you you have a very normal look to you. Like most of the time, like when you see most people that talk about meditative practices, I mean, they look like they haven't had a shower in over a month, you know, and I'm just keeping it 100 with that. I mean, if you're automatically going to assume that they're hippies, and whether they are or not. But to understand, that many businessmen use meditative practices in order to obtain their objectives.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, I think unassuming is a really good word to describe me. Like, when people find out about, like, a lot of people are learning about me for the first time in this conversation. So they see I'm wearing like the Gorham Brothers hat and thing like that. So they've already got a set, idea of what I look like. But if for those that read the book that have never heard my voice or have never seen me and see that I like wearing hats like this, they have a completely different idea. And a lot of that's also by design, because even though it's a law of attraction book, I try to be very pragmatic and very practical about it, and try to have something that, again, it's easy to implement, it's user friendly. So in many ways, I mean, I hope I'm a normal guy, but also I'm very unassuming, because normal is one thing and unassuming is another. And I kind of embrace that. And even again, I know we can see on the picture like half of the cover for the Law of Attraction book.
Mm-hmm.
I very intentionally said I don't want my name or anything on this book cover except for the title, because I wasn't interested in like Andrew Kap being famous. I wanted the book to stand on its own and the title to stand on its own, because that's all I really wanted people to care about and focus on, because that's all that should matter in this instance.
I love that. You ever seen the movie Air, the one that came out about Nike, the Nike movie? Did
Yep.
you see?
Yeah, I saw it.
Good movie. And Ben Affleck, he was at the end of the movie, he's doing like breathing and meditation, and at the end of the movie and stuff like that. And other than the fact that he walked around with no shoes, he was actually a pretty normal guy.
Mm.
So honestly, meditative practices can be very beneficial to mostly businessmen. You know, Going back to the law of attraction. I mean, the only people that you ever heard about using the law of attraction before 2006 were like extremely successful businessmen or businessmen that are at the point where they want to be. You could own a business but not be wealthy, but you're doing what you want to do for a living. And a lot of them use the law of attraction.
Yeah, and just mindset and positive thinking in general. Like, it's very interesting when you have these conversations with these billionaires or multimillionaires or whatever it might be, and they talk about how the power of their thoughts and the power of their mind. And I'm always careful in how I talk about it, because I see the dark side to it also. And what I mean by that is, when I first learned about the law of attraction, I failed so many times because I didn't understand the way that it really works. I was gritting my teeth. I was trying to force it. I was simultaneously always thinking about how the thing that I was trying to create, how it wasn't my reality. I was basically inadvertently getting in my own way. So I'm always very careful. And like, even when I describe like the power of your thoughts, I'm more of like this relaxed
All right.
message of, listen, it'll happen when it happens, how it happens. But if you want to make it easier, just find a manifesting method or a visualization method or a scripting method or a gratitude method that you just enjoy enough to do for at least 5 minutes every single day, so that
Mhm.
it's not a chore. It doesn't feel like an uphill battle. It doesn't feel like you're gritting your teeth. That, to me, it's the hack. The hack is about making this fun and enjoyable enough that you look forward to it enough, that you are consistent enough, and it's only 5 minutes every day, that you get the momentum to get the result, which then bleeds into more enthusiasm, which is more consistency, more momentum, more results, and so on and so forth, in this upward trajectory of success and happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction.
Yeah. Remember what I was telling you earlier about me being, I'm streaming through Ecamm right now. That's what I'm streaming
Mhm.
through. There's this guy named Marshall. He's part of the Ecamm family. He does a weekly show on the Ecamm network, the YouTube page and stuff like that. And he's always talking about mindsets and stuff like that. And you're the perfect guy to talk to with him about that, because he talks about stuff like that. Like he may not talk one bit about Ecamm. He'll just talk about like certain ways to carry yourself in certain aspects of what it is that you're doing. And he talks about mindsets and stuff like that all the time. And I've learned a lot from him too. So gosh, he's somebody to talk to. He's a good dude. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to send a link to his show one of these days here soon. I'll probably do it when I get off. But
Yeah. Happy to
Marshall's,
check it out. And I think, wherever people are in their lives, like, once you hit the sweet spot for you in terms of a positive perspective or positive outlook or mindset,
mhm.
when you see things will click, and they'll actually click a lot faster than you think. And
Mm.
then when they do, for me, the trick is to not to think of it as like a crutch, to think of it as like, okay, let me just go down this path without trying to force it or without trying to go too fast and just like enjoy the ride. Because to me, that's what really yields a lot more positive results and helps me be like a lot more consistent on the long term with that positive mindset that's getting me the results that I wanted.
Okay, I get it. I mean, man, it's mind blowing because you know we haven't really talked about this, but do you what's your opinion about as far as taking action along with it? I mean, a lot of people always make fun of the fact that you know the law of attraction. All I got to do is think about it and it comes true. But there's got to be some action to it. But is it necessary?
So yes, so here's the thing. The whole thing about the action, and I'm borrowing a term from that I learned from Abraham Hicks, and who knows if that's where they originated it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not action, it's inspired action that you want to take. Meaning, so for example, we'll go back to the example of like wanting a job promotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone wants a job promotion and they're focusing and thinking of it every day. If they're just going to sit on their couch and meditate about it, they're going to be going in the right direction, but it's not enough to get the promotion. However, through that meditative process, through that practice of visualizing it, maybe it'll occur to them to do a certain project or certain extra work that they bring to the boss that impresses the boss, that gets them the promotion. Or maybe it'll occur to them to go on Amazon and find a book about body language or how to carry yourself better so that they look better in the office. But by that same token, there's action where it's you're taking it rather than a mindset of abundance, you're taking it of a mindset of lack. And that might be action like where they try to badmouth other employees that are in competition with them for the promotion, and it ends up biting them, in the ass because it gets around that they're talking bad about people. Or something else about trying to force the issue, even though you don't really feel like that specific action is the thing. Like for me, again, I wrote the Last Law of Attraction book you'll need to read in 9.5 weeks. It was a grueling 9.5 weeks. I'd get up at 7 a.m., stay right through 4 a.m. But even though it was hard, I always felt like I was doing something fulfilling and I was doing the right thing for myself. It wasn't out of desperation, it was out of motivation and desire. So that's why it was inspired action rather than an action out of lack that was not going to take me anywhere.
Right, I get that because there's sometimes a deadline can be motivating, but are you really getting what it is that you wanted accomplished? That's the question. I mean,
Yeah.
I
And it
remember,
depends on your mindset too. Like
yeah,
for me, for some people, deadlines are a gift because it helps them focus.
yes,
For me, I know, like I don't say like, oh, I'm going to sell 100,000 copies in 3 months because that means like a month into it, if I'm not even close, then there's this extra pressure and I'm thrown off. For me, it's more like, well, no, I'm going to sell 100,000 copies and then I'm going to go to 200,000 and then 500,000, then a million, and it's going to take as long as it's going to take, and probably go faster if I just relax and just push through it and get going in that way. So deadlines work for some people, but if they don't, it's very important for you to recognize that within yourself so that you don't use it against you.
I didn't give myself a deadline when I started this podcast, and when I did, things started going a little bit more, quicker. Like I was supposed to start it probably a year before it did, but I never did. I was just being too much of a perfectionist. I was too nervous. I mean, you know how it is with all this equipment and stuff like that. You got to learn this stuff, and it's really insane. Well, then when my place burned down back in March, I thought, okay, well, that's more delay. I didn't expect to start this until probably October, and I started
Mm.
August 28th, and I gave myself that deadline. I was talking to my friend Anna Hill. She's a dear friend of mine now, and she didn't give me no deadline. She's just like, when are you going to start? And I just popped it on my head. I said either July 28th or August 4th or 5th, whatever it is I said. And it just kind of came out there. So the thing is, why, is it a law of attraction thing that I did by giving myself that deadline? Did I just say, okay, here it is. This is when I'm going to do it. And I managed to make it happen. Did I hustle, or did the universe, God, the universe help me out with that? What is it? That's what you have to ask yourself.
No. Well, it's also, that deadline was you taking action that was already within your ability versus someone like giving themselves a deadline to manifest $50,000 when they're required, like they're relying on outside forces. Like
Mm.
for you, that deadline, you don't require or depend on any outside forces because you have the experience, the wherewithal, the knowledge to in order to do this. So, it's a different kind of deadline. And apparently it works really well for you because it got you going.
Well, to an extent, I did have some assistance along the way, but I get what you're saying. It's not like I had to go get any other additional assistance.
Hmm.
But got a question for you. Is the book is the book focused on applying these principles for the workplace or for your whole life?
Yeah, so if we're talking about the last law of attraction book everyone needs to read, I keep using job promotion as this example, which actually is more in Just Feel Good than the law of attraction one, but only because I'm keeping the example consistent. The book is really more about your whole life, regardless of whether it's finances, whether it's health, whether it's relationships, whether it's work. So yeah, the only reason I keep saying job promotion is because like if I used getting a new car, then I would have stuck to that example. If I used getting $50,000, I would have used that example. But I would hope, or the intention of it is that it really is for your whole life, regardless of what direction you want to go in.
AG, does that answer your question, buddy? But yeah, and AG, I recommend that you also like I not only read his book, but look up the Bible verses of the law of attraction when you Google them up. That'll help you out as well because I know you're a Christian. So, well, that's the best way I could look at it. Compare the two. Okay, AG said yes. It answered his question, but
And by the way, AJ, again, I'm never offended if there's a resistance towards the law of attraction. I don't have a dog in the fight. But if there is any resistance for you for any reason, feel free to check out Just Feel Good because, again, I was very intentional about not making it a law of attraction book. So it might click, it might resonate a little bit more. And obviously, you could always go on Amazon for any of these and start reading them with the Kindle preview. So just go on the book's listing and read the preview, and you'll at least get an idea of the direction that the book is going. So it'll make you help you get a better decision on whether you want to buy it or not.
there you go. That'll work. Man, I'm trying to think. I know we probably need to wrap this up here in a sec. Here, I'm not keeping you too long, am I?
No, dude, I've got time. I don't know the standards of your show, but I can talk. Not to put you under the gun, I could talk for another hour, and it wouldn't break it.
I could too. I could too. I know. I know. I told you off camera. I said I want to do this again in about another 6 months or so. But this is. Yeah, I mean, this has been great, man. Like I'm gonna tell you, I've been looking forward to this for a year and a half. I look forward to talking to you off camera when we get done here. But you see, nothing. As somebody who's been in broadcasting for years, this is all I wanted to do was just talk to people. If there's any way I could create value, and this is probably the show that will create the most value in people so far that I've done. And that's what I want to do. I
Hmm.
want to keep topping that. I might have celebrities on one day and stuff like that, but I want to have therapists, authors, people that really contribute. When you said that about your book, that you didn't want to have your name on the title, that says a lot. That's a very servant's heart.
Hmm.
You
Thank you.
know,
I mean, it's the hope, and and by the way, it's I win out of this too, and actually I explained this in 3 words I use to sell 100,000 books. I'm I try to be very, I don't know if it's selfishly selfless or selflessly selfish, but like everything I have is the understanding of I win when my readers win. Like it, the win isn't when they fork over their money to get the book, because if they don't like the book, they won't recommend it, they won't read it, they won't give it a good review. So there is a selfish stake in it for me for them to get something, not just enjoyment of the reading experience, but the actual result they want. And then I know, so basically by me winning, they win. And by them winning, I win. So for me, it's more of like, we're like a rising tide raises all ships. So my perspective is all like, if I can create that scenario and that situation in all the books, that's how I know I've gotten the real win that I'm looking for.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, the happiest people I know have done for others. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
They've done their part to do for others. I'm not talking about going to a volunteering at a church. I saw I was
And
I'm not talking
by
about.
the way, like anyone, I'm not a licensed psychologist, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I would say, you know only, don't follow this as medical advice, but if anyone out there is depressed, as long as you're not a danger to yourself or people around you, if you're just feeling bad, you
Mhm.
might really pleasantly surprise yourself of how good you feel if you just do something to serve others. Whether it's volunteering at an animal shelter, volunteering at a homeless shelter, doing something positive for somebody else without them asking you to, it might
Yes.
really light and fill you up.
I've noticed that over the years. It really has. Even if it's like, I believe, what's the old expression? Change the world one random act at a time.
Hmm.
I do that all the time. I always try to change the world with one random act at a time. Even if it's a simple thing like giving somebody a compliment, or that homeless person that might be bumming money off of you. No, if you may not have the money to give them, but if you say something nice to them, that could make their day.
You never know. You
But
never know.
by the way, I hate to do this to you, but I know he's not going to stop pestering me if I don't put this up here. Your guest reminds me a bit of Dwight from The Office.
I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult.
I don't know. He's always giving people nicknames unnecessary.
Got it.
It's so unnecessary sometimes, but I
Uh,
love
if,
him.
if I can choose a nickname, I want to choose bestseller because that's always my intention
There
of
you,
all.
I love it. There you go. I feel like that's the law of attraction working anyway. Give yourself positive names, no self-deprecating names.
Yeah.
But
Well, and by the way, I've been down that road of self-deprecation versus not. I remember Bruce Lee was very well known for saying, "Don't don't say anything bad about yourself, even in jest, because like you're always listening and your mind's always listening." I'm
yeah,
not going to say whether that's true or not, but I do know that ever since I heard him say that, I've always been a little bit more hesitant of the self-deprecating thing,
yeah,
or at least more of like, am I doing this as a social manipulation to make people like me, or am I doing it because I'm really having a good time with it? And that's me. And anyone else has got their own thing.
yeah. I mean, yeah, self-deprecating, and it could really mess up that subconscious mind. It really could. I noticed. Did you ever watch the midnight? What's that movie? What's that? Duncan Trussell. Do you know who Duncan Trussell is?
The
Comedian.
name rings a bell, but
Okay. Well, he's got a show on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel, and
okay.
he interviewed his mom before she passed away, and there was this meditative practice or mindfulness. If people out there that don't like to use the word meditation, but it was a mindfulness practice where he focused everything. And I tried this thing where and I talked about it on my first episode, right? Where I focus on certain parts of my body, like my hands and my feet, and I remove my mind and put it into those things, and it really just absolutely cleared my mind for the short amount of time that it did, and I felt healed. And I do that a couple times a day. Doesn't take long. Doesn't take long. But if you listen to that episode of I think it was episode 8 of the Midnight Gospel, it's fantastic, and you know this, and it really helped out my subconscious mind too. It's like, okay, shut up, brain. Let me go to bed.
Hmm.
You know, that's the biggest one. See, people think that because you're sleeping, that you're resting. You might be resting your body, and maybe you'll have good nights where you're resting your mind. But how many thoughts do you think your brain is thinking while you're sleeping? Millions,
There's a lot going
hundreds of
on.
thousands at least.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah, just because you're sleeping doesn't necessarily mean your mind is resting. What do you think a nightmare is? What do you think a good dream is? That's not rest. You'd have better luck taking 20 shots of tequila and blacking out, and then you might rest. Your mind might rest because you won't remember nothing. But don't go, kids. Don't do drugs. But
And tequila it's a rough lesson to learn. Everyone learns it. The first time everyone learns that, they always learn it the hard way.
I had the Whiskey Jesus Dylan Carney on a few weeks ago, and we I I sampled 3 of the whiskeys that he makes from his distillery, and I only sampled 3. Okay, that stuff knocked me on my ass. I was like, good night, man. I don't know how alcoholics do it. I really don't. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you're a big drinker or not, but
No, I'm no judgment on people that are like for me. Uh, when I was younger, I mean, I'd be partying like anybody else, but
sure.
for me, it doesn't really do anything for me. Like I end up just being tired and out of it by the end of the night. So
Yeah,
you know,
if you're not drinking it for the taste, that it's when you get to a certain age, then I don't know why you're doing it anyway. Like, I actually legitimately enjoyed the taste of those, so it was nice. Like, one of them tasted like straight maple syrup. It was so good. But and I like to have a cold beer here and there. But the last one I had was, well, actually my birthday was last week, but before that it was like 2 weeks. I'm just not a huge drinker.
hmm,
I'm going to I'm going to Boston in around the beginning, middle of October, and I'm going to a chocolate and wine tasting, and I'm thinking, okay, buddy, how much wine is it going to be served at this thing while I eat chocolate? I mean, is it going to be enough to like? Is it a tasting, or am I going to be able to have a full 8 ounce glass? What is it we're getting down with?
Hmm.
So I had to be very careful about these things.
Well, I'm not the most refined person in the world, but if I remember right, like a lot, sometimes those wine tastings, you're not even like ingesting it. You're just tasting and like then spitting it. So I don't know if they'll do that for
Oh,
you.
well, that explains a lot. Okay, so that's what. Okay, did you ever see that movie called? What was that movie called with Paul Giamatti and Thomas Hayden Church? Sideways. Did you ever see that?
Long, long time ago. Long time
Okay.
ago.
Well, there's one part where he freaks out and he dumps a whole bucket on his head. I think that was the spit platoon.
Yeah, that's because like I mean I again I don't think I've ever. It's been a long life for me. I don't think I've ever actually been to a wine tasting, but my understanding is like that's what they do because they want to make sure people can continue to think cogently as they, continue to try the different things. So
Yeah. Well,
you'll know when you get there. You'll be like Andrew was completely wrong or Andrew was completely right.
dude, yeah, I'm gonna have to write you about that definitely, or at least I might have to demand for your phone number. Be like, Andrew, you ain't gonna believe what happened to me. Okay, but it's chocolate. I mean, come on, the fat kid inside. Here I am self-deprecating. The thicker, beautiful gentleman inside me wants to taste some chocolate though, because there was three options on this trip. There was bowling, there was a ghost walk, and then there was wine and chocolate. And I said, well, I'm from Memphis, so I've been to the Mississippi Delta, seen plenty of ghost walks.
Hmm.
I don't need to bowl because I'm not very good at bowling. So a wine tasting may actually potentially put me in an Irish pub. And I've always wanted to go to an Irish pub in Boston, Amesbury area. So let's see what we got.
What to do like a tally of your audience, like what choice each person would make. I would have done the ghost walk personally, but
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to find out what your audience, which direction they might go in.
Yeah, they're going up. We're going up to, Salem's only like 45 minutes from the same place that I'm staying in. So
Hmm.
have you ever been to Boston or Salem?
I've been in the area. Boston was just like for I went to MIT for a concert, so I was like in the area, but I don't think I ever like did anything in Boston itself. But that was
Not
a
just,
long time ago.
I didn't know that's where MIT was located, was in Boston.
I don't know if it's actually in Boston. I think it might be close to it. I think it might be in the neighborhood because it was so long ago. So I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I don't think it might actually be. It might be in Cambridge. I don't know. You can see how
Yeah.
much I know about it.
I,
I just
I
went
just,
for a concert, like
I
to
just
see
can't,
live.
I just can't imagine, somebody from Boston going, the square root of.
The square root. I can't even do it. I can't do a good Boston
I know.
accent.
I'm from the South. Okay. But see, I'm from Memphis. We're not cowboy hats and cowboy boots. We're more like polo shirts and, maybe like Crocs, polo shirts and Crocs. So there you go. Crocs
Hmm.
seem to be the new fashion statement down here.
Hmm.
Yeah. So at least we're dressing
Crocs are
comfortable.
now fashion forward in Tennessee.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the South is really a very fashion forward area. It's a little bit ostentatious. So, the hair's bigger, from the women, the clothing is a little bit more scandalous and bright. I mean, it's, the accents are a little bit sexier. I don't think, shoot, I mean, everybody loves a Southern girl.
Hmm. No arguments here, man.
my,
Trust
fr-
me.
my boy AG said, how about that clam chowder?
Clam chowder.
Clam chowder.
Chowder.
Yeah, that's right.
Dude, your podcast is gonna blow up, and there's gonna be a bunch of people from Boston. Like, what the hell's with them making fun of us here?
Dude, I'm gonna, if I figure out how to chop, okay, I could chop up, like, I mean, I got a guy that does my shorts, my 1 minute shorts, but if I can figure out how to do like 3 or 4 minute videos, I'm gonna do that just to get them to come on here and attack me. I'm gonna be like, look, I'm going up there in a month. You can kick my ass then. So there you go. Oh man. And Andrew, let's do this again in 6 months.
Yeah, man.
Let's do
And
this again.
if I may, I want to leave your audience with a go away thought,
The
just
floor is
because,
yours.
in case, I mean, hopefully there's been some value in this conversation, but if not, this is with the understanding that whatever your day's been like right now, maybe you had a great day, maybe not a so great day, maybe you're having a great year, maybe not a so great year. what I want to do is suggest wherever you're at for any kind of improvement in your mood, and you can do this every single day, is set a timer on your phone and just try to think of things in or about your life that you're grateful for. And for anyone having a really rough time and they can't think of anything, I'm going to do a little thinking for you right now. I want to remind you of your heart, which has been beating in your chest every second of every hour of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, of every decade that you've been alive. I want you to have gratitude for your eyes that see, your ears that hear, your sense of touch and taste and smell, your arms, your legs, your feet, your fingers, your toes. I want you to think about every friend that you've had, every favor that's ever been done for you, every mentor that has been in your corner and looked out for you. Every night and every moment you've had a roof over your head and food on the table and clothes on your back, regardless of whether it's been a struggle to have those things or not so much of a struggle to have those things. Every person in your life who's ever been there for you, ever given you a kind smile, every laugh you've ever enjoyed, every cool movie or TV show that you've ever got to go to, every podcast episode, hopefully like this one, that gave you a little bit of a break from whatever's going on in your life. Anything you can think of, there's always so many things out there. And we're not looking to fake it or try to pretend like, oh, look how happy and excited I am. It's more like a calm energy of like, yeah, this feels good. Yeah, I'm grateful for my heart that literally is beating nonstop for decades now. I'm grateful really for friends that have been in my life, whether they're still with me or not, whether it ended on good terms or not, any relationship, any girlfriend or boyfriend, husband, wife, spouse, whatever. It's about, for me, just that I recommend for you, just this energy and awareness and acceptance and embracing of there are always good things in life. And it isn't about pretending life is perfect. It's about pragmatically and strategically thinking and acknowledging these things with the understanding that when you do, you are opening a pathway, whether it's energetically or just psychologically or something else, towards a better experience, towards better moments, towards really more reasons and more excuses to feel even more gratitude and to keep the process and keep the cycle going in your favor. And I really hope that you take that to heart and that it serves you for tonight, for tomorrow, for anything else any other time.
Well said. Well said. And Andrew, once again, thank you for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure. I've had a few laughs. The broadcaster side comes out in me every once in a while with the laughs, but man, I appreciate this. This has been a very serious conversation that needed to happen because a lot of people are still like, I know that you've surrounded yourself around it, and I have too, but there's still a lot of people out there that don't understand that you give what you get, or you get what you give, excuse me. And there's just this kind of like rudimentary way of thinking nowadays that, and I hate that it's still like that. And I'm hoping that before my lifetime is up, that this becomes a regular thing where everybody can positively, whether it's from achieving something incredibly small, like getting a parking space that you want every day, or being able to achieve your goal of doing another career that you want to do, or being with the person that you always wanted to be with, all these things. And because of guys like you and a small handful of others, man, you make that possible. So thank you, Andrew.
And thank you for the compliment. Thank you for sharing with your audience. And thanks to everybody now and in the future that might listen to this episode. I appreciate you all.
Absolutely. I'm going to take us out. Thank you once again to Andrew Kap for being on here with us, man. A great guy. Glad to have him on here. I'm going to have him on here again. This is, I don't care. I don't care what this show does, ratings or anything like that. This guy's got to come on here and talk to me again. So you can guarantee that Andrew Kap will be back on here with us. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Hank Russell Invitation. Peace out.